The following audio contains a collection of short horror stories centered around virtual reality gaming. These stories include themes of psychological horror, potential violence, and disturbing situations. Listener discretion is advised.
I slouched on Jesse's couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone while he explored the latest VR sensation. I believe the game was called Nebula Drift, or something along those lines. The soft whir of his high-end gaming PC mixed with the occasional excited exclamation as he navigated the virtual cosmos. "Dude, you've got to try this," Jesse gushed, his hands gesticulating wildly at empty air. "The graphics are insane." I grunted non-committally, only half listening. We'd been friends since college, but lately, Jesse had become obsessed with VR gaming, spending more and more time lost in digital worlds. "Holy shit," Jesse whispered suddenly, his tone shifting dramatically. "Did you see that?" I glanced up, eyebrow raised. "See what?" Jesse's body had gone rigid, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. "They're everywhere," he muttered, voice trembling. "How did they get in here?" A chill ran down my spine. "Jay, you okay, man?" He didn't respond, instead beginning to move jerkily around the room, arms outstretched as if feeling for invisible obstacles. "Get away!" he shouted suddenly, causing me to jump. "Don't touch me!" I stood up, heart racing. "Jesse, come on. Take off the headset. You're freaking me out." Jesse spun to face me, and even through the opaque visor of the headset, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. "Mike," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "When did you get here?" My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? I've been here the whole time." Jesse cocked his head, reminding me unsettlingly of a curious bird. "No," he said slowly. "You just arrived. You're standing right in front of me." I took an involuntary step back. "Jay, this isn't funny. Take off the damn headset." "Why would I do that?" he asked, a note of confusion in his voice. "Then I wouldn't be able to see you properly." He reached out suddenly, hands grasping at the air inches from my face. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. "Stop it!" I yelled, genuine fear creeping into my voice. Jesse lowered his arms, then spoke in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "Mike, I need you to listen carefully. They're coming. They've found a way through, and they're using me to get to you. You need to run. Now." Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but concern for my friend kept me rooted in place. "Dude, please, just take off the headset." He shook his head violently. "No time! They're almost here! Run!" With that final scream, Jesse lunged at me. I didn't think, I just reacted, darting past him and sprinting for the door. I heard a crash behind me as he collided with something, but I didn't look back. I burst out of the apartment, taking the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding in my ears. It wasn't until I was 2 blocks away that I finally slowed, gasping for breath. As the adrenaline began to fade, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Should I call someone? The police? A hospital? Before I could decide, an empty text message popped up on my screen. My eyes were glued, waiting for another message to follow as a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. After 15 seconds or so, I turned off my phone, shoved it deep in my pocket, and started walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go back there. Not now. Maybe not ever.
Story 2.
The sun hadn't even risen when I dragged myself out of bed, my head pounding from a sleepless night. I'd been up late arguing with my girlfriend, another fight about my obsession with gaming. As if wanting the latest tech was a crime. VR for me was more than just a toy. It was the future. I stumbled into the bathroom, wincing at my reflection. Dark circles under bloodshot eyes, stubble shadowing my jaw. Great. I looked as awful as I felt. The drive to the mall was a nightmare. Some idiot cut me off, nearly causing an accident, and I spilled scalding coffee all over my favorite shirt. By the time I found a parking spot, I was ready to scream. But none of that mattered when I saw the line. Hundreds of people, all here for the same reason. The excitement was palpable, a current of electricity running through the crowd. I took my place, checking my watch. 6:47 a.m. Only a few more hours. Time crawled by. The sun climbed higher, beating down on us. Sweat trickled down my back, my shirt sticking uncomfortably to my skin. But I didn't care. I was so close. "Hey man, you okay?" the guy in front of me asked, eyeing me warily. "You look pretty rough." I forced a smile. "Long night, but it'll all be worth it once I get that headset." He nodded enthusiastically. "I hear you. I've been dreaming about Cosmic Odyssey for months. The neural feedback is going to be insane." We chatted about games and VR tech, the conversation helping to pass the time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the line began to move. That's when I noticed him. A man about 10 people ahead, fidgeting nervously. His eyes darted around, and he kept reaching into his jacket, as if checking for something. A knot formed in my stomach. Something felt off. We inched closer to the entrance. The nervous man's agitation grew more obvious. He was muttering to himself now, his hands clenching and unclenching. Suddenly, a store employee appeared, looking pale and shaken. "I'm sorry, everyone," he announced, voice quavering. "We've just sold our last unit. There are no more available today." The crowd's disappointment was audible, a collective groan of frustration. But it was nothing compared to what came next. "No f***ing way!" the nervous man exploded, his face contorting with rage. He shoved people aside, storming towards the entrance. "I didn't wait all night for nothing." Time seemed to slow as he reached into his jacket. My heart stopped as I saw the glint of metal. A gun. "Nobody's leaving until I get my headset," he screamed, brandishing the weapon. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then, pandemonium. Screams erupted as people scrambled to escape. I was knocked off my feet, my back hitting the pavement hard. Panicked bodies surged around me, a stampede of terror. I scrambled up, my legs shaking as I ran. The echo of shouting filled my ears, punctuated by what might have been gunshots or just the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. As I jetted away from the building, gulping in the fresh air, a hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. All this for a game, for a piece of tech that suddenly seemed so trivial. I stumbled to my car, hands trembling as I fumbled with the keys. I sat in the driver's seat with only one thing in mind, that maybe it was time to reevaluate my priorities.
Story 3.
The clock on the wall showed 2:37 a.m., but I was determined to reach the next checkpoint in ethereal realms. Just one more quest, I told myself, adjusting the VR headset over my eyes. The familiar fantasy world materialized around me, a lush forest furnished with bioluminescent plants. I'd been grinding for hours, my eyelids growing heavier with each passing minute. But I was so close to leveling up. I must have dozed off at some point because suddenly the scenery changed. The vibrant forest faded away, replaced by my living room. I blinked in confusion, taking in the virtual replica of my own home. Every detail was perfect, from the worn spot on the carpet to the stack of unwashed dishes by the sink. "What the hell?" I muttered, my voice echoing strangely in the empty space. This wasn't part of the game. I realized something was very, very wrong. I moved cautiously through the eerily familiar space, my footsteps unnaturally loud in the silence. I stepped into the kitchen, and my blood turned to ice. There, sprawled across the kitchen table, was me, a perfect replica of my own body, lifeless and pale, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A scream caught in my throat as I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I clawed at the VR headset, desperate to escape this nightmare. The headset clattered to the floor as I gasped for air, my eyes darting wildly around the room. My real living room, empty, normal. I checked the kitchen. It was empty, no body on the table, no sign of disturbance. But there, on the counter, sat my mug, the one I'd left in the living room before starting the game. It was filled with steaming coffee, wisps of vapor curling into the air. and beside it lay a handwritten note. "You really should get more sleep." My blood ran cold as I recognized the handwriting. It was my own.
Story 4.
I slipped the VR headset over my eyes, the familiar weight settling comfortably on my face. The startup screen flickered to life, bathing my vision in a soft blue glow. It was Friday night, and I was ready to lose myself in a cyberpunk thriller that had been consuming my evenings for weeks. "Hey, Sam, you joining tonight's raid?" Jake's voice crackled through my headset. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, grinning as I materialized in the game's neon-drenched cityscape. "Let's show these corpos what we're made of." We set off through the virtual streets, a motley crew of hackers and rebels. The mission was simple: infiltrate the Megacorp's headquarters and steal their latest tech. But in this game, nothing was ever truly simple. As we crept through the shadowy corridors of the virtual skyscraper, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something felt off. "You guys hear that?" I asked, pausing mid-step. "Hear what?" Jake's avatar turned to face me, confusion evident even through the pixelated features. "I don't know. It sounded like footsteps in my apartment." "Dude, you're being paranoid," Jake laughed. "Focus on the game. We're almost at the server room." I shook off the feeling and pressed on, but the unease lingered. As we hacked our way through the final firewall, I heard it again. A distinct creak, like someone stepping on that loose floorboard out by my bedroom door. "Guys, I swear I heard something," I insisted, my heart racing. "I think someone's in my apartment." "Sam, come on," Jake sighed. "You're freaking yourself out. There's nobody there." "I'm telling you, I heard—" A loud crash from somewhere in my real-world apartment cut me off mid-sentence. My blood ran cold. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, frozen in place. "Sam, you okay?" Jake's voice sounded distant, unimportant. With trembling hands, I reached up to remove the headset. The game world flickered and vanished, replaced by the darkness of my living room. I held my breath, straining to hear any sound of an intruder. Silence. "Hello?" I called out, my voice quavering. No response. Slowly, I stood up from my gaming chair, every muscle tense. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the apartment felt different, like the air itself had shifted. I crept towards my bedroom, pushing the door open with a trembling hand. The room was empty, but my eyes locked onto the window. It was open, the curtains billowing gently in the night breeze. I never leave that window open. Heart pounding, I rushed to check the rest of the apartment. No sign of forced entry, nothing missing. But as I returned to the living room, my foot crunched on something. I looked down to see shards of ceramic, the remains of a mug I'd left on the coffee table. That was the crash I'd heard. But how? There was no one around. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The open window, the broken mug. Someone or something had been in my apartment while I was lost in the virtual world. I sank back into my gaming chair, mind reeling. My phone buzzed. A message from Jake asking if I was okay. I stared at the screen, unsure how to even begin explaining what had just happened.
Follow Vin District Talks for weekly stories.